What's up, guys? I'm going to show you guys the various ways of connecting ASUS BT6 to create your home network to expand your Wi-Fi coverage. I'll show you guys using Ethernet cable, so I will make the physical connections, and I will be answering a lot of common questions that well, not a lot of common questions, but some common questions that get asked, the most common ones. And I'll show you guys how to expand your Ethernet ports using a switch. So we'll start off with the typical setup. I'm going to omit the coax cable. And I'm going to omit power supplies, but I will be showing you guys the Ethernet connections and the wireless connections. Well, can't show you the wireless ones, but I'll just tell you this is wirelessly talking to each other. Okay, so we have a cable modem here. You might have a DSL, you might have a cable modem, you might have an ONT. ONT is an optical network terminal. It's kind of like a fiber modem. So just assume that that's the modem, and so if you have an ONT, I'm referring to this basically, or a DSL, this is what I'm referring to. So, and then you have your standalone router. Now this router might work really well if you're close to it, but on the other side of your house, maybe you're just not getting those, fast enough speeds. Maybe you're gaming, maybe it's lagging a little bit, maybe your ping is a little high. So you decided to get a mesh system like the ASUS BT6, which is an absolute beast of a mesh system for internet speeds of up to gigabit. And I've done the full review on this, so you guys could check that out. I'll link that down below. I'll also link the product links below as well. So you decided to get this because a mesh system is two or more devices that work together to increase your Wi-Fi coverage. And the beauty with ASUS is that this is on AI mesh. So if you have an existing ASUS router that also supports AI mesh, technically that can be added on the network as well. So keep that in mind. Granted, you want to make the best router your primary one, so also keep that in mind as well. Okay, so we're going to start off by disconnecting this router. If this is not an ASUS router, just put it off to the side. If it is an ASUS router and you want to connect it via AI mesh, I will actually bring an ASUS router. In fact, let me bring that right now. Alright, so I brought over the BE86U, so I'll show you guys how to make this connection as well, in case you guys want to use that. Okay, so before I make the connections, I'm going to first say that if you have a modem router combo, so the router is built into this thing, what do you do in that case? Because I obviously removed the router, but if you have a modem router combo, you essentially have two choices. Choice one is to disable the router portion of it. And the way you do that is you have two choices for that. You could either call your ISP, your internet service provider, and ask them to swap it out with just a modem, which is what I have. So when I get internet, I have fiber internet, so I use an ONT. And so when I called my ISP, I asked them if they could just send me a modem, not a modem router combo. So that's the easiest way of doing it. The other way is you can actually access the options, which typically there's a sticker on the modem router combo, and it's usually an IP address you type into a browser on a computer that's hooked up to this thing. And in there, you're going to try to look for an option called bridge mode, and you want to enable that. So enabling bridge mode disables the router. Depending on the model you have, it might be disable router or something else. So it depends on your specific modem router combo. You can also call your ISP and ask them how to do that as well. Now that's basically option one, which is to basically disable that, which is the recommended option. Option two is technically you don't have to disable it. You can just leave it and then run the ASUS in access point mode. However, I don't recommend that because ASUS, you typically want the better router to be your main router. Okay, so we're going to assume that it's now just a modem. So we'll start off with, we basically pick our main one. Technically, both of these are identical, but with the recent ASUS's, they started putting a sticker on the one that it's like, hey, I'm the main one. Technically, it doesn't have to be, but we'll just go along with the sticker. So we're going to pick this as the main one because it has the sticker on it. And all we're going to do is we're going to connect this to the WAN port, Wide Area Network, which is our 2.5 gigabit port. So once we do that, we set it up in the ASUS Router app. We can also set it up using the ASUS browser interface as well. But typically the ASUS Router app is usually the easier way of doing it. So you set it up in the ASUS Router app, it finds it. You basically specify what type of router it is. It's like set up a new network. You specify the type of router it is, which in this case is the BT6. And then it finds it. It tells you to scan this QR code that I'm hiding right here behind this blue sticker. And then it connects to it. Then it basically says, hey, do you want to pick a Wi-Fi name and password? So you do that. So with this ASUS, when you're setting it up, it's going to make like a separate, whatever name you pick, it's going to make an IoT, an Internet of Things Wi-Fi with it as a separate IoT network. So what I do is basically my main network, I just set that up just for my fast devices, for my Wi-Fi 7 devices, like my Galaxy S25 Ultra. I'm like looking at the iPhone right here, but the iPhone 16 Pro Max, even though it's Wi-Fi 7, it's not quite as fast as the Samsung and the OnePlus. But basically, I set the main one up for Wi-Fi 7. So after you set up the SSID, you're officially done. Technically, you don't need to add the second one. If you don't have one, let's say you just bought a 1-pack, technically you're done. However, in most cases, you bought it as a 2-pack and you want to use it as a mesh system. So how do you connect the second one? Well, there are two options. Option 1 is wireless backhaul and option 2 is wired backhaul. However, for the initial setup, with ASUS, you're supposed to set this up in the same room. So it's supposed to be within 3 meters of each other during setup. So all you have to do is literally connect this via power, turn on the switch, and just wait a few minutes. And inside the app, it'll tell you like, oh, adding a second one and stuff. So after you wait a few minutes, the light over here, I think, turns white when it's done. And then inside the app, you will see like, oh, you see 2. And then at that point, you are now set up. However, that was just set up. So you don't want to leave 2 in the same room, 3 meters apart from each other. That's actually not good to do. So you want to take this and place it somewhere else, typically around 20 to 40 feet away or so, if you're running it in wireless backhaul. So let's talk about wireless backhaul. Then I'll show you guys wired backhaul. So in wireless backhaul, you basically take this, put it 20 to 40 feet away or so, depending on your place. If you have a lot of thick walls, you want to put it a little bit closer. If you have if more of an open area, you could put it a little bit further. In my typical testing for the full reviews, I usually put it around 35 feet away or so with a few walls in between. With my wireless backhaul video, where I show you guys the wireless backhaul speeds on the TV, that one's about 25 feet away or so. And I'll link that video down below just so you guys could see the speeds, because it's actually pretty fast. For up to gigabit speeds, it's actually pretty fast. So anyways, so you set that up. Initial setup, just unplug it, go plug it in a few rooms away, 20 to 40 feet away, and then just wait till the power's on. And then there's an optimize button inside the ASUS router app. So you click on optimize or optimization, give it a few minutes, it optimizes the connection, and then you're done. So now you've created a wireless backhaul network with both of these. You have much better Wi-Fi coverage, assuming you were coming from a standalone, and then you're essentially done. So let's start getting to some of the questions that I get asked. So in wireless backhaul, am I free to use any of these ports? And the answer is yes, except you can't use the WAN port. Yeah, you could use any one of these 3 LAN ports. So any one of these 3, you can, if you want to connect something via Ethernet, you just plug it in, plug this other side into that device, and then you're golden. So if you want to connect something else, you could do that as well. So you could connect, so let's say you want to connect your PlayStation via Ethernet. Well, you could do that. You could connect this to that. And does this improve performance? It depends. If you have a very capable Wi-Fi 7 device, it might decrease performance because Wi-Fi 7 can go faster than gigabit speeds. But if your Wi-Fi device is not that fast and it has a gigabit Ethernet port, this can actually improve your speeds. And in that video, if you guys watch that video, you guys will see this example. It's actually a really good video to watch. So now that you have these coming out, you have your 2 devices connected, and you're like, you know what, I want to connect a few more. How can I do that? Well, in that case, you get a switch. And essentially, there are 2 types of switches, and the name brand doesn't actually matter. You could get a Netgear, you could get a TP-Link, you could get a D-Link. So the switches, the brands don't matter. It will work with that. So you would just get an unmanaged switch. Well, there's actually 2 types of switches, an unmanaged switch and then a managed switch. and that allows you to expand your Ethernet port. So let me just quickly talk about the differences between the two. If your goal is to expand your Ethernet ports, you want to get an unmanaged switch because that costs a lot less than a managed switch. A managed switch costs more because it can do everything an unmanaged switch can and more. It can also, you can separate out basically ports to not see each other. You can separate, which is basically using VLANs. And I've done a separate video on how to do this by actually showing you guys how to do it and actually running a test to show you guys what that looks like. Also, there are managed switches that have power over Ethernet, like this one has power over Ethernet, and you can actually power certain devices, compatible devices. You can't just power anything you want. But if you have certain devices that require power over Ethernet, well, you could get a managed switch that can do that. So that's another benefit of getting a managed switch. But if you don't need that, if all you're trying to do is expand your Ethernet ports, why pay more money when you could just pay less to just do what you want it to do? The other thing is, I mean, this is a managed switch in my example, but I'm going to use it just like an unmanaged one. The other thing worth noting is this switch supports up to 2.5 gigabit speeds. But it's also pointless to get that as well because you're coming out at gigabit speed. So there's no point in getting a faster switch unless you're trying to do something over your local area network where you can benefit from that. But in most cases, if you're coming out at gigabit speeds, why pay more and get a 2.5 gigabit switch when you could just pay less and get a gigabit switch? So for the sake of this video, I'm just going to assume that this is an unmanaged switch and we're going to use it as such. Even though my managed switch, if I don't touch any of the settings, works just like an unmanaged one. So if I want to expand my Ethernet ports, what I could do is take any one of these LAN ports and then plug it to any one of these ports on the switch. I plugged it into port 8, I could have plugged it into port 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter. And now I have 7 other usable ports. So if now I want to hook up my NVIDIA Shield, I could just plug it into any one of these ports, plug in the NVIDIA Shield to this, and then I'm golden. There's no option I need to go and set and change. And again, I'm talking about an unmanaged switch. Even with a managed switch, there's no option I need to change. However, if I did go and change some option, then the port actually does matter. But again, we're just assuming this is an unmanaged switch. So, and again, just because this is a 2.5 gigabit switch, because this Ethernet cord is coming out at gigabit speeds, maximum, that's the speeds that I'm going to get. So just keep that in mind. And assuming, and that's for the LAN, assuming your internet speeds are gigabit, then technically this can come in at up to gigabit speeds. So keep that in mind. If your internet speeds are 500 megabits, it's going to go in at 500 megabits to the main router, and then through wireless backhaul, it's going to try to give as much of those speeds as possible, and this thing can do 500, honestly, pretty easily. And then so this wire would come in to this switch at up to 500 megabits. So if I was connecting this to my NVIDIA Shield, this would be giving up to 500 megabits per second to my NVIDIA Shield. So all of these Ethernet ports are up to speeds. They're not, just because it's 2.5 doesn't mean you're going to get 2.5. Unless you have two devices connected to the same switch, they both can handle 2.5 and they're talking to each other. So like if you're transferring a file from one computer to another computer to a network attached storage, and they're both hooked up to the same and they both can do 2.5, then you can actually transfer it up to 2.5. But in many cases, most people are using this for internet access and expanding their Ethernet ports, so you are limited by the slowest speeds, essentially, that's coming across. But you are allowed to basically use all these other ports. If you want to connect another device, then be my guest. You can come here and connect this to some other device. And again, there's nothing you need to set or change an option. It will just automatically work. So at this point, you can do that. Now, if you want, you can also, instead of having this hooked up to this guy, you could have, let me try to like reduce some of these wires just to make it a little more manageable. Okay, so we have the purple wire going to the switch, and we can actually hook it up to this main router as well. So it doesn't have to hook up to the second one. In fact, Typically, it's better if you hook it up to the main one, if you can do that. So we could do that, the same exact thing. So basically, this is providing us access to the internet. So our internet, assuming it's 500 megabits per second, is going in at 500 megabits, going into the ASUS, and then coming out at 500 megabits, going to the switch. So anything coming out of this will go out at 500 megabits per second. So that's how you expand your Ethernet ports. Now, let's talk about wired backhaul. So let's just take out some of these wires. Let's move the switch out of the way. So now let's talk about wired backhaul. How do you do wired backhaul? Well, with wired backhaul, you go from one of these LAN ports, any one of the three you want, to the WAN port of this, basically. So that's how you make a wired backhaul, otherwise known as Ethernet backhaul connection. And what this is doing is it's trying to give you the best possible speed. So you have this router going to this, so you have this modem giving you your internet speeds to this guy, and then from these speeds, this Ethernet, it's actually going to this guy. So this is creating a wired backhaul network. It's eliminating any wireless hops, which is typically a good thing. Now we've ensured a strong and stable connection. And again, just like with if we want to expand our Ethernet ports, we can connect our switch to any one of these ports or any one of these ports on this router. So if we want to expand our Ethernet ports, we could do that. And now the switch, we're allowed to use any one of these other 7 ports to connect multiple devices. And again, it automatically works. There's nothing I need to go and change or set or anything like that. Assuming I'm using an unmanaged switch, or if I'm using a managed switch and I haven't, basically set up that port to do something specific. So at this point, this is how you expand your Ethernet ports. And if you wanted to, you could bring another ASUS AiMesh router like this RTB86U, and you can also expand this and add it as a AiMesh node. And you can have this run in wireless backhaul as well. So you would just power this on. You probably need to do a factory reset if it's been set up as a main router. You would do a factory reset on this, and basically, which is just holding down this pin for a few seconds, give it a few minutes, it'll reset and everything. And then you would, inside the ASUS router app, you go to the AiMesh, and then you just click to add another one, and then it finds this one, and it'll add it to this network. So you can run this in wireless backhaul, so you can have a mix of wired backhaul and wireless, or you can also just run this wired as well. And the way you would run this wired is you can either run a cable from this guy to this guy, a cable from this guy to this guy, or you could go from this guy to the switch to this guy. It doesn't actually matter. So in this case, I'll just do it from the main one. So we'll go from this LAN port to this basically port right here. And because both of these are LAN WAN, I could have also picked this port as well. So that would have also worked. But I'll just pick it to this port. Now this main port handles up to 10 gig speeds, but again, I'm coming out at gigabit speeds from the BT6. So the fastest this thing can go is up to gigabit speed. So keep that in mind. And again, that's also limited by your internet speed. So if your internet speeds are slower, let's say they're 500 megabits, well, that's the fastest it can go. So now I've created a 3 wired backhaul setup, and at this point you're probably getting really, really good Wi-Fi coverage throughout your home. I mean, if you don't live in a mansion or something, you might need a few more. So the most common question I get asked is, if you guys noticed, I was connecting the switch to this guy, connecting the switch to this guy, or I could connect the switch to this third guy as well, and that would be fine. The common question I get asked, the most common, is can I connect my modem to my switch first? So let me unplug everything here. So let's get that all disconnected. Let's put this off to the side right here. So can I connect my modem to my switch, any one of the ports, and then from my switch go to the router, any router? And the answer is no. So unless you kept your modem router enabled and you were running this in access point mode, you can't do that. The router must go to the modem first. So that's the limitation. So assuming your modem goes to the router first, which, so in my case, it's going to the BT6, to the blue port right here, to the WAN port. From that, then I can connect the switch to this guy. It could go here. It could go from this guy to go here. It could go from this guy to go here. I can even do a wired backhaul where instead of going from this guy to this guy, I could literally go from, we'll use this white Ethernet cable. So I could go from the LAN port of this guy to any one of these ports, and then I could go from any one of these ports to basically this guy. And because it's the purple Ethernet cable, I will hook it up to the WAN port of this guy. So I have now still made a wired backhaul network. So it's still fine to do it this way as well. So now let's talk about the caveat with the BT6 specifically. If you have internet speeds of greater than gigabit and under 2.5, let's say you have internet speeds of 2 gigabits per second, just to make it really simple. Your modem is going to give you those speeds at 2 gigabits. So it's going to go in through this wire. And because this is a 2.5 gigabit port, at this router, I have 2 gigabit speeds. If you have a fast enough Wi-Fi 7 device, you should be able to get close to those speeds if you do a speed test. Okay? When you're close to this one. As soon as you make a wired backhaul connection, you go from Ethernet to this guy. Even though this is 2.5 gigabits, at this point, you slow down your connection to gigabits. So even though you came in at 2, you are now going out at 1. So because the source is coming out at gigabit, even if you go into this 2.5 gigabit port, it's actually coming in at gigabit speeds. So if you were to do a speed test with a very fast Wi-Fi 7 device, you would get no more than gigabit speeds on the secondary one. However, if you left this in wireless backhaul, which this is more of a rare thing than anything else, very few routers are like this. But this router in wireless backhaul can actually go faster than gigabit speed. So if you had those internet speeds of 2 gigs, I would honestly recommend running this in wireless backhaul configuration, and you can actually get faster than that. Because if I do an internet speed test on the secondary one with the fast enough Wi-Fi 7 device, I can actually still get close to those Wi-Fi 7 speeds. And my wireless backhaul video kind of shows that. And that's why it's a good video to watch. So just keep that in mind, that if you're getting a BT6, you probably want to leave it in wireless backhaul configuration if your internet speeds are greater than gigabit. If your internet speeds are gigabit and less, then go ahead and wire it. Or just leave it in wireless backhaul anyways. But wireless backhaul, if it is in wireless backhaul, placement does matter. Quite a big deal. You can't just like hide it in some closet like 100 feet away and expect to get those speeds. So placement does matter. But if it is optimally placed, you can actually get faster speeds over wireless backhaul, which is rare. Most mesh systems get faster speeds over Ethernet than they do over wireless backhaul. It just so happens to be this has very beefy Wi-Fi 7 wireless backhaul speed. So hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you guys did, I'd appreciate it if you guys smashed that subscribe button, shared the video, liked the video. I really appreciate all the support. And if you guys have any additional questions or comments, please leave in the comment section as well. I'll try my best to answer them. With that, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.